Today I started by finishing the proposal and working on the outline. But it's been 2 days since I've been here because I watched the director's cut of Woodstock. And that gave me even more ideas and suggestions and took me some time to make some notes from that, making sure that I have the timestamps of when I quoted material and so forth. And I found some incredible information by watching that. So now today, and of course I'm a week early in getting the proposal turned in, or 2 days or 3 days. I'm always early getting the proposal turned in. And this is my initial title that I'm giving it. Spoiler alert, this is not going to be the final title, but it's a working title. Working image, spoiler alert, this image isn't hardly even in the essay at all. All right, but my statement of purpose remains the same. What I learned from my research and from watching the documentary and from hiring people to actually do the calculations, the number of attendees, and that includes people who were coming and going and on their way to, parked on the side of the road to get to, and everything around the area, exceeds 4 million people. So what they started with a dream of 50,000 turned into 4 million. Wrap your head around that one a minute. Now here's my thesis statement. And yes, my thesis statement at the end changes, as you saw that in the strategy, which showed you the final thesis statement. But this is the start of it. And this never did ever change. My concrete foundation doesn't change. But once I leave the planet and I get up into the little spiritual realm, there's no telling where we're going to go. So this is, what the professor has asked for, and this is what I'm going to turn in. The broad topic, narrowed focus, and I've shown the tipping point. And then these are the methods that I'm going to use. And these are my proposed outcomes. And it actually I completed this outcome. And I have some initial working bibliography because, as you saw, when I start every day, I start with that open. And so these are the first initial citations. And each of these citations show one of these methods. So I didn't just throw in a bunch of URLs and make a citation page on EasyBib. I actually include these four. I actually have 5 methods, but however many are required. All right, so these show that. Now, at the end of the game, as you all probably know, we ended up with well over 200 citations. But it's a big question. I didn't ask a little bitty question. I asked a great big question. Okay, now from here, we're going to go over to the outline. Give you something pretty to look at while I talk to you about outlining. You won't be the first person who has said, oh, I don't want to have to do an outline. Many people do. And I've been teaching this since Cher was a child. And I tell you, most people do not come in with an embracing spirit for the outline. I may be the only person on the planet. But I don't like to spend time being lost in an essay. I don't like sitting down and just writing stuff out, hoping that something hit or miss makes it. I like to be organized and know what I'm talking about because I'm going to create a logical progression of vetted, researched, documented ideas to prove my point. And I, again, am not saying I'm right, everybody else is wrong. I'm saying my point is valid and can be and could be considered as a possible theory of how something happened. Or if I'm doing a cause and effect, I'm showing my opinion based on facts. If I'm doing problem and solution, I am using facts to describe the problem, and I am offering factual options for solving the problem, and then offering, based on that evidence, my opinion of what would work first. I don't like sloppy essays where I just try to cut and paste a bunch of stuff. And that means that I've got to organize my thoughts into the outline. And we've already done the strategy. And when I start that way with a simple strategy, let's remind ourselves what that strategy looked like. When I start here, it doesn't scare me because this is manageable. I can totally do this. Now what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be filling in all of these spaces with information. So let's take a look at what that outline finally looks like. And I don't want you to panic because this One thing at a time. And I'm a color coder, so we know that about me. So let's look at the outline, where we take this strategy and we fill it in with all of the information. Now what I did is I copied and pasted that strategy into a Word document, and I had all those notes files that you saw open. Let's look at one of those note files together. Now this is used later, but this is an example of where I took notes about where I found somebody to get the total people, and this is how I got that, and I have all kinds of documentation about that. So that's what these notes are for. But down here you can see this is like something that I watched, and I show you that later on in how to get that transcript from a YouTube tutorial. Now right here you see where I used this. When I take something out of these notes to use, let's just take this right here like this. I color code it, and that way when I come back I know I used that, and that makes me, it helps me, because even in a shorter essay, I have done it before. I've used the same quote twice. So if I color code it, I know I used it. And you can see I was just transcribing while I was watching this. And so I've got all kinds of spelling errors in here. I don't care. These are my notes. Okay, so now this is that little thing about Michael Lang, the person who came up with this. All right, pause it right here. Let's go back to the outline. And when I find the place where that's going to go, I pop it into the outline. So remember that strategy? I'm going to put my images where they go. I never even used this image. Somebody else did that. I couldn't get permission to do it. I made something better, I think. But this is what I did. These are where you can see the notes that I have taken, and I copy and paste them over into the essay, into the outline. And that way, I've got my outline filled in with facts, and of course around all of these facts are going to come my own words. So these are my own words. I don't have them color coded properly. I don't ever get that into it, but some people do. Okay, so there's the dream, and the dream was Michael Lang's, and so that's where I'm going to pop in these little fill out things. Do you see that? Some of it never happens, but all right, so now I'm going to show you what the outline looks all the way laid out, and that's what it looks like when it's filled in. Some of these things came and went. The odds thing I abandoned early on in the project. The odds don't matter. You can't calculate the odds. It's incalculable. And when we did this graph here, which I paid somebody, I got the calculations of, let's look at this real quick. I decided to show just how incalculable it was because people just don't get it. And they just think, okay, a lot of people there, okay, whatever. Well, let's look at the festivals that were going on around it. Newport Folk, 1,200 people. Trips Festival, 4,500 people. Monterey Pop, 9,000. Schaefer Music Festival, 7,000. It's all happening in the same time period. That year, December, 25,000 Miami Pop, 5,500 Palm Springs. Detroit, 30,000. Woodstock, 4 million. I went on beyond that. Altamont, 100,000. Isle of Wight, 400,000. I went ahead and jumped ahead of it just a little bit. This is what I used the guy to find out to come up with these populations. And so I have all that documented, of course, in my works cited and everything, and I know exactly where the facts come from and how we did those estimates. Now, the odds you can't calculate. Okay, because it's incalculable. You can just see that from this little. So I send this over to a graphic artist who I pay $7 on Fiverr, Fiverr.com, where you can get a lot of things done for inexpensively, and they have a lot of fun doing it. And this graph turned into this graph, because I want to make sure that the reader sees how incalculable this is. So that's how that graph became that graph. It's the showstopper part of the essay, isn't it? So determining where this went in the essay took some time, because I got to build up some information from my little you know, the sign of the times, because that's how the tipping point works. And then we get up to here, and this is what happened when the tipping point hit. And I like the colors, and that's how that happened, because it's facts. All right, back to the outline. Now you can see as the outline developed that I started with that strategy, and then I filled in the strategy with some more information. And I knew, because it's a big question, it's going to be a big essay, I knew that my introduction, which is normally one paragraph, was not going to be able to be one paragraph, because I have too much to this question. Normally, you would be able to write an introduction in 8 to 10 sentences that would contain the thesis statement. But this became bigger than that as it went on. I put the images that I created. See, now I can see, can't I? Oops, this one's going in 2 places. Wonderful in an outline, because that way I can see. And I filled in some things that, you know, with information that I go through here, and I can easily go back to it, find out what that information was, and where that was located, so I can document everything. Remember that little director's cut that I told you that I watched? This is all from that. Some of it's in my own words. I get inspired sometimes, and I can go over to that part of the outline and write that out, and then go back to something else, and I'm not lost in my processes. And I really like that. The poster thing is referenced several times, but it's all they had. They didn't have internet. There wasn't any Instagram or Twitter or anything at all. You had these little underground newspapers, and you had a poster. That's it. And then it goes on to here, and then that's the outline. So I work within that, and that helps me get to where I need to go. An essay evolves over time, and as I learn more, the essay changes. And when the essay changes, the easiest thing for me to do is to go in and make adjustments to the outline before I start writing the essay, because that way I know what I'm doing, because I'm learning something new all the time, because again, I'm on a learning curve. I started knowing very little. I didn't know there were 4 million people involved in that whole thing. I still don't know what that little platform was that's on the stage that I'm so interested in. And I'm learning as I go along. And as soon as I've laid the foundation of the factual, concrete data, now I'm off into the world of the spiritual, and I'm learning something all the time there. And as I learn something, that information that I just learned informs me about where that should go in the essay. And I copy it, and I highlight it in green or blue or whatever color I'm feeling in the mood for that day. I go over to the outline, and I decide where that information should go, and I paste it in there. And then I go and learn more. And that's how it works for me. And that concludes this tutorial on the outline. And now we're going to go into the rough draft.